the monster who needed a nap. Barnaby the Beast was, to put it mildly, a grumble monster. He lived in a cozy, albeit somewhat dusty, cave nestled in the whispering woods. Barnaby had scales the color of a grumpy sunset, a tail that thumped with discontent, and teeth that looked perpetually ready to nibble on something, probably a particularly sour grape. But Barnaby wasn't inherently mean. He was simply sleepy. Terribly, awfully, monstrously sleepy. You see, Barnaby suffered from a rare condition known as chronically cranky cave monster syndrome, or CCCMS for short. It meant he needed at least 12 hours of sleep every single day to function like a normal, slightly less grumpy cave monster. But getting those 12 hours was proving to be a Herculean task. The Whispering Woods, despite its gentle-sounding name, was a hotbed of noise and activity. Chirping crickets held all-night singing competitions. Squirrels practiced their acrobatics on the branches just outside Barnaby's cave, their nutty chatter echoing through the stone. And worst of all, the mischievous pixies of the periwinkle patch loved to play hide and seek, their tinkling laughter bouncing off the cave walls at all hours. Barnaby tried earplugs made of moss. Too itchy. He tried building a soundproof wall of mud. It crumbled. And he even tried politely asking his neighbors to be quiet. They just giggled and offered him acorns. Nothing worked. He was always tired, always grumpy, and always one step away from letting out a roar that would shake the entire woods. One particularly bothersome morning, Barnaby woke up, or rather, didn't wake up properly, to the sound of a woodpecker using his cave roof as a drum set. He lumbered out of bed, his scales practically radiating frustration. He stumbled outside, his eyes half closed, and let out a low growl. "Good morning, Barnaby," chirped Pip, a tiny field mouse who lived under a mushroom near Barnaby's cave. Pip was perpetually cheerful, which only added to Barnaby's morning grumpiness. "It is decidedly not a good morning, Pip," Barnaby grumbled, his voice thick with sleep. "This woodpecker, the squirrels, the pixies, they are all conspiring to keep me awake." Pip twitched his nose. "Perhaps you should try counting sheep, Barnaby?" Barnaby scoffed. "Sheep? I tried counting sheep last night. I got to 372. Then a particularly fluffy sheep started tap dancing and I lost count." Pip giggled. "Tap dancing sheep? Oh, Barnaby, you do have the strangest dreams." Barnaby sighed, a puff of smoke escaping his nostrils. "Dreams are no comfort when you haven't had enough sleep. Pip, I need to find a way to get some rest. Maybe I should move to the silent sea, where the only sound is the gentle lapping of waves." "But the silent sea is so far away," Pip exclaimed, "and you'd miss all your friends here in the Whispering Woods. Besides," Pip added thoughtfully, "maybe there's a way to help you sleep here." Barnaby looked at Pip, a flicker of hope in his grumpy eyes. "Do you really think so, Pip? I've tried everything." "Maybe not everything," Pip said, his whiskers twitching with an idea. "Let me see." He scurried off towards the periwinkle patch, leaving Barnaby standing in the clearing, wondering what the little mouse was up to. Pip spent the next few hours buzzing around the Whispering Woods like a tiny, determined bumblebee. He spoke to the crickets, explaining Barnaby's predicament. He pleaded with the squirrels, offering them a mountain of acorns if they promised to be quiet during Barnaby's nap time. He even ventured into the periwinkle patch and, with a mix of charm and thinly veiled threats, convinced the pixies to find a quieter place to play. Meanwhile, Barnaby wandered through the woods, feeling more miserable than ever. He saw a family of bunnies having a picnic and almost roared just to scatter their carrot sticks. But then he remembered Pip's words and decided to try a different approach. He took a deep breath, counted to 10, skipping 7 because it was an unlucky number for grumpy monsters, and walked over to the bunnies. "Excuse me," he mumbled, trying to sound polite. "I don't mean to intrude, but I'm having a bit of a sleep crisis." The bunnies, initially startled by the sight of the big, grumpy monster, quickly calmed down when they saw the weariness in his eyes. "A sleep crisis?" asked the mother bunny, her nose twitching sympathetically. "Oh dear, sleep is very important. Have you tried chamomile tea? Or a warm bath?" Barnaby shook his head. I can't fit in a bathtub, and chamomile tea tastes like, well, like weeds boiled in swamp water. The bunnies giggled, and Barnaby actually managed a small smile. We're not very good at monster-sized solutions, the father bunny said apologetically, but we can certainly try to keep our voices down while you're trying to rest. Barnaby was touched by their offer. Thank you, he said, a genuine note of gratitude in his voice. That would be very kind. By the time Pip returned to Barnaby, the sun was beginning to dip below the trees, casting long shadows across the woods. He arrived with a triumphant squeak and a collection of strange items. Barnaby, Barnaby, I've done it, he squealed, waving a bundle of fluffy feathers, a small vial of shimmering liquid, and a handful of smooth, gray stones. Done what, Pip? Barnaby asked, intrigued. I've gathered everything we need for the ultimate monster napping experience, Pip announced. First, he said, holding up the feathers. These are feathers from the sleepy owl. They're said to have magical calming properties. We'll stuff them into your pillow. Next, he held up the vial of shimmering liquid. This is a potion made from moon petal flowers. It smells like dreams and helps to quiet the mind. Finally, he presented the stones. These are worry stones. When you feel anxious or restless, you can hold them in your paws and the smooth texture will soothe you. Barnaby stared at the items, impressed by Pip's resourcefulness. Where did you even find all this stuff, Pip? A little bird told me, Pip winked. Together, Barnaby and Pip went back to the cave. They stuffed the sleepy owl feathers into Barnaby's mossy pillow, creating a fluffy, calming headrest. Pip sprinkled a few drops of the moon petal potion around the cave, filling the air with a scent that smelled like sweet berries and starlight. And Barnaby carefully arranged the worry stones on his bedside table. Then Pip had one last surprise. He'd rallied the woodland creatures. The crickets, under instruction from Pip, agreed to keep their singing to a soft, gentle hum. Even the squirrels promised to limit their acrobatics to a few quiet leaps and bounds. The pixies, somewhat reluctantly, agreed to play their games in a meadow far away from Barnaby's cave. Barnaby couldn't believe his ears. He peeked outside and saw the bunnies sitting quietly, munching on clover. He heard the gentle hum of the crickets, like a lullaby. He saw the squirrels tiptoeing on the branches, careful not to make too much noise. And in the distance, he heard the faint, happy laughter of the pixies. He turned to Pip, his eyes shining with gratitude. This is amazing, Pip. I don't know what to say. Pip beamed. Just get some sleep, Barnaby. You deserve it. Barnaby climbed into his bed, nestled his head on the sleepy owl feather pillow, and closed his eyes. He held the worry stones in his paws, feeling their smooth coolness against his scaly skin. He took a deep breath, inhaling the calming scent of moon petal flowers. For the first time in what felt like forever, Barnaby didn't hear the annoying chirping, chattering, or tinkling that usually kept him awake. He heard nothing but the quiet hum of the woods, a gentle symphony of nature's lullaby. He drifted off to sleep almost immediately. And what a sleep it was! Barnaby dreamed of fluffy sheep that didn't tap dance. He dreamed of silent seas where the waves whispered secrets of tranquility. He dreamed of a world where everyone understood the importance of a good nap. He slept for 12 glorious hours. When Barnaby finally woke up, the sun was shining brightly, but it didn't bother him. He felt refreshed, energized, and, dare we say it, even a little bit happy. He stepped out of his cave, a genuine smile on his face. The bunnies waved hello. The squirrels offered him a particularly plump acorn. And even the crickets seemed to sing a little louder, a song of celebration for the monster who finally got his nap. Barnaby strolled over to Pip's mushroom, where the little mouse was waiting, his whiskers twitching with anticipation. Good morning, Barnaby, Pip chirped. How do you feel? I feel wonderful, Pip, Barnaby said, his voice filled with genuine joy. Thank you. You're the best friend a grumpy, sleepy monster could ask for. From that day on, Barnaby made sure to get his 12 hours of sleep every night. And the Whispering Woods, thanks to Pip's efforts, became a haven of peace and quiet during Barnaby's nap time. Barnaby, no longer constantly grumpy, became known for his kindness and generosity. He even started helping the bunnies with their gardening and telling the squirrels fascinating stories about the stars. And sometimes, when the moon was full and the woods were still, you could even hear Barnaby himself humming a gentle lullaby to the sleeping forest, a monster who finally understood the power of a good nap, and more importantly, the power of friendship. So, little one, remember Barnaby the Beast. Even the grumpiest of creatures can be happy and kind with a little bit of rest and a lot of good friends. Now close your eyes, take a deep breath, and dream sweet dreams of silent seas, fluffy sheep, and the magic of the whispering woods. And remember, like Barnaby, you need your rest too. Sweet dreams. The snowman who didn't melt. Once upon a time, nestled in a valley known as Sunnybrook Dell, though it wasn't always sunny, there lived a snowman named Pip. Pip wasn't like the other snowmen. He wasn't particularly round or perfectly formed. His carrot nose was a little crooked, one coal eye was slightly larger than the other, and his twig arms stuck out at odd angles. But Pip possessed something far more special than perfect symmetry. He had a heart filled with wonder and a spirit that refused to melt, literally and figuratively. Every winter, the children of Sunnybrook Dell would build snowmen with joyful abandon. They'd roll enormous balls of snow, carefully stack them, and adorn their creations with whatever they could find: carrots, coal, buttons, old hats, and even sparkly bits of fallen tinsel from Christmas. The snowmen would stand proudly in gardens and fields, silent sentinels of winter, until the sun returned with its warmth and gently ushered them back into the earth from whence they came. Pip was built on a particularly blustery day, right after a magnificent snowfall that transformed Sunnybrook Dell into a glistening wonderland. Little Lily, a girl with pigtails the color of sunshine and eyes as bright as the winter stars, was the architect of Pip. She'd even given him a jaunty, mismatched scarf that her grandmother had knitted. "He's perfect," Lily had declared, beaming at her creation. "I'm going to name him Pip." And Pip was happy. He stood tall, or as tall as his slightly lopsided form allowed, and watched Lily play in the snow. He watched her build snow forts, make snow angels, and even attempt to sled down a small hill, which usually ended in a giggle-filled tumble. Days turned into weeks, and the winter sun, although weak, began to exert its power. One by one, the other snowmen of Sunnybrook Dell began to succumb. Their noses drooped, their smiles faded, and they slowly slumped into ever smaller puddles of icy water. Pip watched, a strange feeling stirring within his snowy chest. He didn't want to melt. He loved watching Lily, loved the feeling of the crisp winter air on his snowy face, loved the sound of the wind whistling through the bare branches of the trees. More than anything, he wanted to stay. "It's almost time," he heard Mrs. Gable, Lily's grandmother, say to Lily one afternoon. Mrs. Gable had a kind face etched with wrinkles earned from years of smiles and worries. "The sun is getting stronger. The snowmen will be returning to the earth soon." Lily's face fell. "But I don't want Pip to melt," she cried, hugging Pip's middle section. Pip felt a surge of affection for Lily. He wished he could hug her back, but alas, twig arms weren't designed for hugging. That night, Pip made a silent vow. He wouldn't melt. He didn't know how, but he would find a way. The next morning, the sun shone brighter than ever. Pip could feel the warmth on his snowy body. He saw Mr. Henderson's snowman, Reginald, lose his top hat to a watery grave. He saw little Timmy's snowman, Captain Blizzard, slowly lose his sword, a sharpened icicle. Panic began to set in. Pip tried everything he could think of. He stood as still as possible, hoping that if he didn't move, he wouldn't melt. He tried to imagine himself in the coldest place he could think of, the North Pole, surrounded by penguins and polar bears. Nothing seemed to work. He could feel himself shrinking just a little. Then he overheard a conversation between two robins perched on a nearby branch. "It's getting warm, isn't it?" chirped one robin. "Indeed," replied the other. "Soon the Spring Bloom Festival will be here and Sunnybrook Dell will be bursting with flowers." "But," chirped the first robin, "I heard Old Man Fitzwilliam talking about a new invention. He calls it a cooling contraption or something like that. Apparently, it keeps things very, very cold." Pip's coal eyes widened. A cooling contraption. That might be his only hope. He knew Old Man Fitzwilliam. He was a kind, eccentric inventor who lived in a small cottage at the edge of the woods. His garden was filled with strange contraptions made of cogs, gears, and various bits and bobs. But how could Pip, a snowman who could barely move, get to Old Man Fitzwilliam's cottage? Just then, Lily came running outside. She looked sad and carried a small watering can filled with icy water. "I'm going to try and keep you cold, Pip," she said, her voice thick with emotion. She gently poured the water over Pip's snowy head. While the water was cold and refreshing, Pip knew it wouldn't be enough. He had to get to Old Man Fitzwilliam. "Lily," Pip said, his voice a bit muffled since he didn't have a mouth. But Lily, being a very special girl, somehow understood him. "Pip? Did you just talk?" she gasped. Pip focused all his energy and managed to wiggle one of his twig arms, pointing in the direction of the woods. Lily followed his gaze. You want to go to Old Man Fitzwilliam's cottage?" she asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. Pip wiggled his arm again, more emphatically this time. Lily thought for a moment. She knew Old Man Fitzwilliam was a bit odd, but he was also very kind. And she knew that Pip was no ordinary snowman. "Okay, Pip," she said, her voice filled with determination. "I'll help you get there." Getting Pip to Old Man Fitzwilliam's cottage was no easy task. Lily couldn't lift him, of course. So she came up with a plan. She found her little red wagon, lined it with snow, and then, very carefully, she used a shovel to scoop Pip into the wagon. It was a bumpy ride. Pip rattled and wobbled with every turn of the wheels. His carrot nose threatened to fall off several times, and his coal eyes kept shifting precariously. But Lily persevered. She pulled the wagon slowly and steadily, her little legs working hard. Finally, they arrived at Old Man Fitzwilliam's cottage. The air around the cottage seemed cooler, and Pip felt a surge of hope. Lily knocked on the door. After a moment, the door creaked open, revealing Old Man Fitzwilliam. He was a small, wiry man with a shock of white hair and twinkling blue eyes. He wore a patched-up tweed jacket and had a pencil tucked behind his ear. "Well, hello there, Lily," he said, his voice a bit raspy. "And who's this you've brought with you?" "This is Pip, Mr. Fitzwilliam," Lily said breathlessly. "He's a snowman, and he doesn't want to melt. I heard the robins talking about your cooling contraption, and I was hoping you could help him." Old Man Fitzwilliam looked at Pip with a curious expression. He walked around the wagon, examining Pip from every angle. He poked him gently with his finger, and then he scratched his chin thoughtfully. "A snowman who doesn't want to melt, eh?" he said with a twinkle in his eye. "Well, I've heard stranger things. Come in. Let's see what we can do." Old Man Fitzwilliam led Lily and Pip into his workshop. The workshop was a chaotic wonderland filled with tools, wires, gears, and half-finished inventions. Steam hissed from a strange-looking machine in the corner, and sparks flew from another device on a workbench. "The cooling contraption, you say?" Old Man Fitzwilliam chuckled. "Yes, I suppose that's what you'd call it. It's actually a perpetual winter preserver designed to keep things cold indefinitely. But cooling contraption is easier to say, I suppose." He led them to a large, box-like structure made of shiny metal and adorned with various dials and gauges. Now, the preserver is designed for preserving things. Like vegetables or maybe even a particularly stubborn icicle. I never thought I'd be using it on a snowman. With Lily's help, Old Man Fitzwilliam carefully maneuvered Pip into the perpetual winter preserver. The inside of the machine was surprisingly spacious and lined with a soft, white material that felt incredibly cold. Old Man Fitzwilliam adjusted the dials and flipped a switch. The machine hummed to life, and a wave of intense cold washed over Pip. He shivered delightfully. "There you go, Pip," Old Man Fitzwilliam said. "You should be nice and frosty in there. The preserver will keep you perfectly cold no matter how warm it gets outside." Lily was overjoyed. She hugged Old Man Fitzwilliam tightly. "Thank you, Mr. Fitzwilliam. You saved Pip." "Nonsense, my dear," Old Man Fitzwilliam said with a smile. "Pip saved himself. He had the will to stay, and that's half the battle." And so, Pip stayed in the perpetual winter preserver throughout the spring, summer, and fall. He was perfectly comfortable, though he did miss Lily's visits. Lily visited him often, bringing him stories of the blooming flowers, the buzzing bees, and the changing leaves. She told him about her school, her friends, and all the exciting things that were happening in Sunnybrook Dell. When winter finally returned and Sunnybrook Dell was once again covered in a blanket of snow, Old Man Fitzwilliam opened the perpetual winter preserver. Pip stepped out feeling as good as new. He was still a little crooked, his nose was still a bit askew, and his twig arms still stuck out at odd angles. But his heart was filled with joy. Lily ran to him and gave him the biggest hug she could manage. "You're back, Pip," she cried. "You're really back." And Pip was back. He had proven that even a snowman, with enough determination and a little help from a kind friend and an eccentric inventor, could defy the odds and stay right where he belonged. From that day on, Pip became a permanent resident of Sunnybrook Dell. He spent his winters standing proudly in Lily's garden, watching her play in the snow. And in the warmer months, he stayed snug and frosty inside the perpetual winter preserver, dreaming of snow and waiting for Lily's visits. He became a legend, a symbol of hope and perseverance for all the residents of Sunnybrook Dell. He was the snowman who didn't melt, the snowman who proved that anything is possible as long as you have the will to try. And every year, when the first snow fell, the children of Sunnybrook Dell would build new snowmen, remembering the story of Pip and knowing that even the most unlikely of heroes can achieve the impossible. And that, little one, is the magic of believing in yourself, just like Pip, the snowman who didn't melt. Now close your eyes and dream sweet dreams of snowy adventures and friendships that last forever. Good night. The hat that told the truth. Barnaby Button was, to put it kindly, a fibber. Not a malicious one, mind you. He wasn't trying to hurt anyone or gain an unfair advantage. He just embellished. A lot. A little white lie here, a fantastical exaggeration there, and soon Barnaby's life sounded like a never-ending adventure, even if the most exciting thing he'd done that day was successfully butter a piece of toast without dropping it. He told his friends he wrestled a bear. It was a particularly fluffy dog. He claimed he spoke fluent Dolphin. He understood barks and whistles. He insisted he could fly. He had once jumped off a low shed with an old umbrella. While his friends initially marveled at his incredible tales, they slowly started to raise skeptical eyebrows. Barnaby's stories were becoming a bit too unbelievable. One day, a traveling salesman arrived in Barnaby's small village. He was a peculiar fellow with a twinkle in his eye and a wagon overflowing with the most unusual wares. There were self-stirring teacups, boots that could dance the jig, and a compass that pointed towards your greatest desire. But Barnaby's eye was drawn to a simple hat perched precariously on the top of the pile. It was a plain, gray wool hat, the kind your grandfather might wear, but something about it hummed with a quiet, undeniable energy. That, the salesman said, noticing Barnaby's interest, is the hat of veracity. It tells the truth. Wear it and you will speak only the absolute, unvarnished truth, even if you don't want to. Barnaby chuckled. Sounds like a bit of a nuisance, doesn't it? The salesman grinned. It can be, but it can also be incredibly freeing. Sometimes, the truth is the most powerful magic of all. He offered Barnaby the hat. Try it on. Hesitantly, Barnaby placed the hat on his head. It fit perfectly, snugly, like it was made just for him. He felt a strange tingling sensation, a gentle buzz that resonated deep within his bones. Well, the salesman asked, how do you feel? Barnaby opened his mouth, intending to say something witty and impressive, but instead, the words tumbled out, kind of itchy. And I just ate a whole jar of pickles and now my stomach feels like it's doing somersaults. He blinked. He hadn't planned to say either of those things. He planned to say something about feeling connected to the universe and speaking the ancient language of the stars. But the hat had intervened. See, the salesman said, his eyes twinkling. The truth. Barnaby, intrigued and slightly panicked, decided to test the hat further. He ran to his friends, Lily and Thomas, who were playing marbles in the dirt. Hey guys, Barnaby said, feeling a surge of his old, familiar fib-telling energy. I just got back from climbing the highest mountain in the world. It was so tall I could see the entire planet. But the words that actually came out were, hey guys. Actually, I spent the morning trying to teach my cat to fetch. He mostly just sat there and licked himself. And I think I have a slight sunburn on my nose. Lily and Thomas stared at him, bewildered. Barnaby, are you all right? Lily asked. You sound normal. Thomas added, and you admitted you can't climb mountains? What's going on? Barnaby, feeling a mix of embarrassment and relief, explained about the hat of veracity. He confessed to all his previous exaggerations, the bear dog, the dolphin speak, the umbrella flight. The hat forced him to be honest, and the truth, he discovered, felt surprisingly good. Lily and Thomas, initially shocked, listened patiently. When he was finished, Lily smiled. We knew, Barnaby. We knew you were making things up. But we liked your stories anyway. They were entertaining. Thomas nodded. But it's kind of nice to hear the real you for a change. Barnaby spent the rest of the day wearing the hat of veracity. He told the truth about everything. He admitted he was afraid of spiders. He confessed he couldn't whistle. He revealed that he sometimes wore his socks inside out. At first, it was difficult. Telling the truth felt vulnerable, like stripping away a protective layer. But as the day wore on, Barnaby realized something profound. The truth was enough. He didn't need to embellish his life to make it interesting. His real life, with its small imperfections, its little anxieties, and its quiet joys, was perfectly wonderful just as it was. He learned that being honest with his friends fostered a deeper connection. They laughed at his silly fears, offered solutions to his minor problems, and appreciated him for who he was, not for who he pretended to be. That night, as the moon bathed the village in silver light, Barnaby sat by his window, the hat of veracity resting on his lap. He realized that the salesman was right. The truth was a powerful magic. It was the magic of genuine connection, of self-acceptance, and of a life lived without the burden of constant fabrication. He knew he couldn't wear the hat forever. It was a tool, a lesson, a stepping stone. But he would carry its message with him always. He would strive to be honest, not just with others, but also with himself. He would embrace his imperfections, celebrate his small victories, and live a life that, while perhaps not as fantastical as the stories he used to tell, would be infinitely more real and infinitely more rewarding. And so, Barnaby Button, the former fibber, became known as Barnaby Button, the honest friend. And he lived happily and truthfully ever after. The hat that told the truth, a bedtime story. Barnaby Button, a small boy with hair the color of dandelion fluff and eyes like melted chocolate, lived in a cozy little cottage nestled beside a whispering willow tree. Barnaby loved stories. He loved reading them, listening to them, and most of all, he loved telling them. But Barnaby's stories had a little secret ingredient, a sprinkle of exaggeration, a dash of tall tale, and a whole heaping spoonful of make-believe. He wasn't a bad boy, not at all. He just had a very active imagination, and sometimes his imagination ran away with him. He'd tell his friends he'd ridden a giant bumblebee to the top of Farmer Finnegan's silo. He claimed he could speak the language of squirrels and knew all their secrets. He even swore he'd once had tea with a talking teapot. His friends, Maisie and Finn, used to listen with wide-eyed wonder. But lately, they'd started to give each other knowing glances whenever Barnaby launched into one of his elaborate tales. They loved Barnaby, but his stories were becoming a bit much. One sunny morning, a traveling merchant, old Silas Silverton, arrived in town with his rickety wagon piled high with peculiar things. Silas had spectacles that could see through walls, gloves that could sprout flowers, and boots that could walk on water. Barnaby, Maisie, and Finn gathered around the wagon, their eyes gleaming with excitement. But amidst all the fantastical gadgets, Barnaby's gaze snagged on a simple object tucked away in a dusty corner. It was a gray wool hat, nothing fancy, just a plain old hat like his grandfather used to wear. Silas Silverton, noticing Barnaby's interest, smiled. "Ah, that one," he said, his voice a low rumble. "That's no ordinary hat, young lad. That's the hat of utter truth." "The hat of utter truth?" Barnaby echoed, tilting his head. "Indeed," Silas confirmed. "Whoever wears that hat can only speak the absolute truth. No fibs, no exaggerations, no little white lies. Only the bare, honest facts." Maisie giggled. "That sounds boring." Finn nodded. "What's the point of telling a story if you can't make it a little more exciting?" Barnaby, however, felt a strange pull towards the hat. He, more than anyone, knew the perils of a runaway imagination. "Can I try it on?" he asked Silas. Silas shrugged. "Be my guest, young man. But be warned, the truth can be a powerful thing." Barnaby carefully reached for the hat and placed it on his head. It felt odd. Not uncomfortable, but different. A faint tingle ran down his spine, and a strange sensation filled his head, like his thoughts were being scrubbed clean. "Well?" Maisie asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "What does it feel like?" Barnaby opened his mouth, ready to launch into a dramatic description of the hat's magical powers. But instead, what came out was, "It feels a little itchy, and it smells faintly of mothballs." He blinked in surprise. He hadn't intended to say that at all. Silas Silverton chuckled. "The hat has spoken. It's working all right." Intrigued and slightly apprehensive, Barnaby decided to test the hat further. He turned to Maisie and Finn. "Remember yesterday," he began, feeling a surge of his old, fib-telling energy when I told you I wrestled a lion in the forest? It was a huge, ferocious beast with teeth like daggers and claws like. But the hat wouldn't let him. The words twisted on his tongue, replaced by something altogether different. "When I told you I wrestled a lion in the forest, I was actually playing with Mrs. Gable's fluffy Persian cat. It scratched me a little and I cried. A lot." Maisie and Finn exchanged wide-eyed glances. Barnaby never admitted to crying. "Barnaby, are you feeling okay?" Finn asked, his voice laced with concern. "You're being honest?" Barnaby sighed. He explained about the hat of utter truth and how it forced him to speak only the absolute, unvarnished truth. He confessed to all his previous tall tales. The bumblebee ride was a dream, the squirrel language was just a mimicking their squeaks, and the talking teapot was, well, it was just a very ordinary teapot. Maisie and Finn listened patiently, their initial surprise giving way to understanding. When he was finished, Maisie smiled gently. "We knew Barnaby," she said. "We knew your stories weren't exactly true, but they were fun to listen to." Finn nodded. "Yeah, we liked your imagination. But it's kind of nice to hear the truth for a change." Barnaby spent the rest of the day wearing the hat of utter truth. He told the truth about everything. He admitted he was afraid of the dark. He confessed he hadn't practiced his recorder in weeks. He revealed that he sometimes hid vegetables under his napkin at dinner. At first, it was incredibly difficult. Telling the truth felt like taking off a warm, comfortable coat and standing out in the cold. He felt exposed, vulnerable. He was so used to embellishing, to making himself seem bigger and bolder than he really was. But as the day wore on, a strange thing happened. Barnaby started to feel lighter. The weight of all his little lies, all his exaggerated boasts, seemed to lift from his shoulders. He felt a sense of freedom he had never experienced before. He learned that being honest wasn't about being boring. It was about being real. He discovered that people appreciated him for who he was, flaws and all. He told Mrs. Gable he was afraid of her Persian cat, and she laughed and told him it was a scaredy cat too. He admitted to his mother that he hadn't practiced his recorder, and she didn't scold him but instead offered to help him practice. He confessed to hiding vegetables under his napkin, and his father, instead of getting angry, shared a funny story about his own vegetable hiding days as a child. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Barnaby sat under the whispering willow tree, the hat of utter truth resting beside him. He thought about his day, about the lies he had told, and about the liberating power of the truth. He realized that Silas Silverton was right. The truth was a powerful thing. It was the key to genuine connection, to self-acceptance, and to a life lived with honesty and integrity. He knew he couldn't wear the hat forever. It was a tool, a guide, a lesson. But he vowed to carry its message with him always. He would strive to be honest, not just with others, but also with himself. He would embrace his imperfections, celebrate his small victories, and live a life that, while perhaps not as fantastical as the stories he used to tell, would be infinitely more real and infinitely more rewarding. He took a deep breath of the cool evening air. The whispering willow rustled its leaves as if whispering secrets of its own. Barnaby closed his eyes and made a promise to himself. He would no longer be Barnaby Button, the fibber. He would be Barnaby Button, the honest friend. And with a peaceful smile on his face, he drifted off to sleep, dreaming not of giant bumblebees and talking teapots, but of genuine smiles, heartfelt laughter, and the quiet joy of living a life filled with truth. And as the stars twinkled in the inky sky, the hat of utter truth, lying silent beside him, knew that Barnaby Button had finally learned the most important lesson of all. The lesson that the greatest adventures are not found in fantastical tales, but in the simple beauty of an honest life. Now close your eyes and drift off to sleep, my dear one. May your dreams be filled with honesty and the purest of truths. Good night. The slippers that walked on clouds. Once upon a time, nestled in a tiny village called Willow Creek, lived a little girl named Lily. Lily was a dreamer. She dreamt of flying, of talking to animals, and most of all, of walking on clouds. Every night, she'd gaze at the fluffy white shapes drifting across the moonlit sky, imagining how soft and bouncy they must feel beneath her feet. Lily's biggest treasure wasn't a shiny toy or a fancy dress. It was a pair of old, worn-out slippers. They were made of faded blue felt, patched in several places with scraps of yellow and green, and adorned with a lopsided embroidered star on each toe. Her Grandma Rose had made them for her when she was a very little girl. Grandma Rose, with her twinkling eyes and stories that smelled of cinnamon and adventure, had told Lily these weren't just any slippers. She whispered, "These slippers, Lilybug, have a secret. They were woven with moonbeams and dreams. And if you believe hard enough, they might just take you anywhere you wish." Lily, of course, had tried. She'd wished to go to the moon, to a land made of chocolate, even just to the corner store for ice cream without having to walk. But the slippers remained stubbornly on the floor, refusing to budge. Lily had almost given up believing in their magic, but she kept them close anyway, a cozy reminder of her beloved Grandma Rose, who now lived among those very stars Lily so often admired. One blustery autumn evening, as the wind howled through Willow Creek, Lily sat by the window, watching the leaves swirl and dance. She felt a little sad. School had been difficult that day. A new girl named Maya had joined her class, and Lily, usually so eager to make friends, felt shy and awkward. Maya was confident and popular, and Lily felt like a tiny, unnoticed leaf lost in a whirlwind. Sighing, Lily slipped on her old slippers. They felt warm and comforting against her cold toes. As she curled up on her favorite armchair, she found herself thinking about Maya. She wasn't jealous, exactly. She simply wished she could be as brave and outgoing. She wished she knew how to make a friend. As the wish formed in her heart, A faint, shimmering light began to emanate from the slippers. Lily gasped, staring at her feet. The embroidered stars were glowing, and the faded blue felt seemed to pulse with a gentle energy. Suddenly, the room felt lighter, the wind outside softer, and the slippers felt different. They felt incredibly light, as though they weren't even touching the floor. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, Lily began to rise. She floated up, past the armchair, past the window, and right through the roof of her house. For a moment, she was frightened, clutching her slippers tightly. But then, as she soared higher, fear turned to wonder. Below her, Willow Creek twinkled like a scattered handful of diamonds. Above her, the moon shone down, bathing everything in its silvery glow. And then she saw them, clouds. Not the gray, stormy clouds that brought rain and thunder, but the fluffy, marshmallowy, dreamlike clouds she had always imagined. They were glowing with soft, pastel colors, pink, lavender, and a gentle, shimmering gold. And towards these clouds, her slippers were carrying her. As Lily approached the clouds, she hesitated. Were they really as soft as she imagined? Were they solid enough to walk on? Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes and stepped forward. The sensation was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It felt like sinking into the softest, fluffiest cotton candy, but with a gentle, buoyant support. She opened her eyes and grinned. She was walking on clouds. The clouds stretched out before her like a rolling landscape. There were hills of fluffy white, valleys filled with shimmering mist, and even cloud-shaped trees that sparkled with dewdrop jewels. As she walked, she noticed she wasn't alone. Tiny, winged creatures, no bigger than butterflies, flitted around her. They had bodies like fluffy cotton balls and wings that shimmered with all the colors of the rainbow. They chirped and sang in voices that sounded like tinkling bells. "Welcome, Lily," one of the creatures chirped, landing on her nose. "We are the cloud sprites. We've been expecting you." Lily was speechless. You know my name?" "Of course," the cloud sprite replied, giggling. "We know everyone who dreams of walking on clouds. And we know you have a kind heart and a wish to make a friend." Lily blushed. "How did you know?" "We can see into hearts," the cloud sprite explained. "And we believe you can help us." "Help you?" Lily asked. "How?" "Our Valley of Whispers is fading," the cloud sprite said sadly. "It's where we keep all the kind thoughts and wishes from the world. But lately, there have been too many sad thoughts, too many angry words. The valley is losing its magic." The cloud sprite led Lily to a part of the cloudscape that looked dull and gray. There were no sparkling trees, no shimmering mist, just a flat, lifeless expanse. "This is the Valley of Whispers," the cloud sprite said, its voice barely a whisper itself. "It used to be the most beautiful place in the Cloud Kingdom. Now it's fading away." Lily felt a pang of sadness. She knew what it felt like to feel gray and lifeless. She wanted to help. "What can I do?" she asked. "You need to bring back the kind thoughts," the cloud sprite said. "You need to remind people of the good in the world." Lily thought for a moment. Then, an idea sparked in her mind. She remembered her Grandma Rose's stories filled with kindness and adventure, stories that always made her feel warm and happy. "I can tell stories," she exclaimed. "I can tell the cloud sprite stories about kindness and friendship." The cloud sprites cheered, their tiny voices filling the air with joyful tinkling. Lily began to tell them stories. She told them about a little boy who shared his lunch with a hungry stray dog, about a group of children who planted a tree in their neighborhood, about a firefighter who rescued a kitten from a burning building. As she spoke, the gray landscape of the Valley of Whispers began to change. Tiny flowers sprouted from the ground, their petals shimmering with iridescent colors. The mist began to sparkle again, and the cloud-shaped trees started to glow. The cloud sprites helped her, too. They gathered kind thoughts from all over the world. A child forgiving a friend, a stranger helping someone in need, a family sharing a meal together. They wove these thoughts into the Valley of Whispers, strengthening its magic. As the Valley of Whispers regained its vibrancy, Lily realized that she had a story to tell Maya too. A story about the magic that kindness can bring to the world and back to her. After what seemed like hours, the sky began to lighten. The moon was fading, and the first rays of dawn were painting the clouds with shades of pink and orange. "It's time for you to go back, Lily," the cloud sprite said. "But you've done a wonderful thing. You've reminded us all of the power of kindness." Lily felt a wave of sadness at having to leave. She had never felt so happy, so useful. "Will I ever see you again?" she asked. "Of course," the cloud sprite said with a wink. "Just remember to believe in the magic of your slippers, and remember to keep your heart open to kindness. And perhaps someday you'll be back to visit the Valley of Whispers." With a final wave to the cloud sprites, Lily felt herself descending. The slippers carried her gently back through the roof of her house and lowered her softly into her armchair. Everything was exactly as she had left it. The wind still rustled the leaves outside, but now it sounded like a gentle lullaby. The slippers lay on her feet, no longer glowing, but still radiating a faint, comforting warmth. Lily took them off and placed them carefully beside her bed. She knew that the journey she had taken was real. She had walked on clouds, talked to cloud sprites, and helped restore the magic of the Valley of Whispers. The next morning, Lily woke up with a feeling of excitement. She was no longer shy or awkward. She knew exactly what she had to do. She found Maya in the schoolyard, standing alone. Taking a deep breath, Lily walked towards her. "Hi, Maya," she said. "I'm Lily. I wanted to say welcome to Willow Creek." Maya looked surprised. "Hi," she said shyly. "Thanks." Lily smiled. "I know it can be hard being the new kid, but I'd like to be your friend." Maya's face lit up. "Really? That would be great." And just like that, a friendship began. Lily told Maya about her love for stories, about her dreams of flying, and even, in a slightly roundabout way, about the magic of kindness. That afternoon, Lily and Maya walked home together. As they passed Lily's house, she saw her Grandma Rose's garden. The sunflowers were taller than ever, and the roses were blooming in vibrant colors. Lily knew that Grandma Rose had been watching over her, sending her the magic she needed. She also knew that the real magic wasn't in the slippers, or in the clouds, or even in the stories. The real magic was in her heart, in her ability to believe in kindness, and in her willingness to reach out to others. From that day on, Lily continued to wear her slippers, not just as a reminder of her adventure in the Cloud Kingdom, but as a reminder to always believe in the power of kindness and friendship. And every night, as she gazed at the clouds, she smiled, knowing that somewhere up there, the cloud sprites were watching over her, and that the Valley of Whispers was shining brighter than ever. And so, Lily, the little girl who dreamt of walking on clouds, learned that the greatest adventures are often found not in faraway lands, but within our own hearts, and that even the oldest, most worn-out slippers can hold a little bit of magic, if you just believe. Now close your eyes, sweet child, and may you visit the Valley of Whispers one day. The boy who wrote letters to the moon. Once upon a time, nestled in a valley where fireflies danced like fallen stars, lived a little boy named Leo. Leo wasn't like the other children. While they played tag and built sandcastles, Leo was often found gazing at the night sky, his brow furrowed in thought. He was captivated by the moon. The moon, a silvery disk hanging in the inky blackness, seemed to him like a wise old friend, always watching, always listening. One day, Leo had a brilliant idea. He decided he would write letters to the moon. He wasn't sure if the moon could read, or even if anyone lived there, but he felt a deep connection to it. Perhaps, he thought, the moon felt lonely up there all by itself. Maybe a letter would cheer it up. So, Leo started writing. He used his best crayons and the smoothest paper he could find. His first letter was simple, a crayon drawing of a smiling sun and a wobbly moon, with the words, "Hello, Moon," scrawled underneath. He carefully folded the letter and, with the help of his dad, attached it to a bright red balloon. "Do you think the moon will get it, Dad?" Leo asked, his eyes wide with hope. His dad smiled. "We can only hope, Leo. But even if it doesn't, The act of writing it is special in itself. They released the balloon into the night sky. Leo watched as it became a tiny red speck, then disappeared into the darkness. He went to bed that night with a heart full of hope and a head full of dreams of lunar landscapes. He continued to write letters, day after day. He wrote about his day at school, about the grumpy Mr. Grumbles the grocer, about his mischievous cat, Whiskers. He wrote about his dreams of flying and his fear of spiders. He shared his joys and his sorrows, his triumphs and his failures, all with the silent silver orb in the sky. Sometimes he would write questions. Moon, are you made of cheese? Moon, are you lonely up there? Moon, what's it like to look down on the whole world? He never expected a reply, but that didn't matter. The act of writing was its own reward. It helped him to understand his feelings, to organize his thoughts, and to feel less alone in the vastness of the world. Months turned into years, and Leo continued his nightly ritual. His handwriting improved, his crayon drawings became more detailed, and his letters grew longer and more thoughtful. His little red balloons became a familiar sight in the night sky, a stream of silent messages floating towards the moon. One evening, as Leo was releasing his latest letter, he noticed something strange. A faint, shimmering light flickered near the moon. It wasn't a star and it wasn't an airplane. It was something else, something magical. Leo gasped. Could it be? Was the moon responding? He ran inside and grabbed his telescope. He focused it on the shimmering light and his breath caught in his throat. The light was coming from a small, silvery object that seemed to be floating down towards the earth. He rushed outside, his heart pounding in his chest. The object landed softly in his backyard, right next to his favorite oak tree. It was a small, intricately carved wooden box, adorned with tiny, glittering stars. Trembling, Leo opened the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of soft, silvery moss, was a single, perfectly formed moonstone, glowing with a gentle, ethereal light. And beneath the moonstone was a small, rolled-up piece of parchment. With shaking hands, Leo unrolled the parchment. Written in elegant, shimmering script were the words, "Thank you for your letters, dear Leo. They have brought light to the darkest night." Leo couldn't believe his eyes. The moon had responded. He held the moonstone tightly in his hand, feeling a warmth spread through his body. He knew with absolute certainty that the moon was listening. From that day on, Leo continued to write his letters, but now they were different. He wrote about the moonstone, about the magical message, about the feeling of connection he felt to the celestial orb. He wrote about his gratitude and his unwavering belief in the power of dreams. He also started to notice other changes. He became more confident, more compassionate, and more creative. He excelled in school, made new friends, and discovered a passion for astronomy. He even started writing stories, inspired by the lunar landscapes he imagined in his dreams. Years passed, and Leo grew into a young man. He never forgot the magic of the moonstone or the power of his letters. He went on to study astronomy at university, driven by his lifelong fascination with the cosmos. One day, he made a groundbreaking discovery. He found evidence of a previously unknown energy source on the moon, a source that could potentially solve Earth's energy crisis. His discovery made him famous, and he was hailed as a visionary. But even with all the accolades and recognition, Leo never forgot the simple act of writing letters to the moon. He knew that it was that act of faith, that unwavering belief in the impossible, that had led him to where he was today. He often wondered who had sent the moonstone. Was it a lunar being? Was it a figment of his imagination? Or was it something else entirely, something beyond human comprehension? He didn't know for sure, and he realized that it didn't really matter. What mattered was the impact it had on his life. He decided to use his fame and his platform to inspire others to follow their dreams, no matter how outlandish they might seem. He told his story of the boy who wrote letters to the moon, encouraging people to connect with the universe, to believe in the power of imagination, and to never give up on their hopes. And so, the boy who wrote letters to the moon became a man who inspired the world. He reminded everyone that even the smallest act of kindness, the simplest expression of hope, can have a profound impact on the universe. Now, close your eyes, little one. Let me tell you another story, a bedtime story inspired by Leo's adventures, just for you. Imagine a little rabbit named Luna, who lived in a burrow beneath the roots of an ancient oak tree. Luna loved carrots and dandelions, but more than anything, she loved the moon. Every night, she would hop out of her burrow and gaze at the silvery orb hanging in the sky. She believed that the moon was a giant, magical carrot, floating in the inky blackness. And she believed that if she wrote letters to the moon, maybe, just maybe, the moon would send her a special, extra delicious carrot. So Luna started writing letters. She used tiny blades of grass as pens and dewdrops as ink. Her letters were simple and sweet. She wrote about her carrot garden, about the friendly squirrels in the forest, and about her dreams of flying among the stars. She would carefully attach her letters to dandelion seeds and whisper, "Fly to the moon, little seed, and give my letter to the magical carrot." The dandelion seeds would float away on the breeze, disappearing into the night sky. Luna never knew if her letters reached the moon, but she continued to write them, night after night. One day, Luna woke up to find a strange object in her carrot garden. It was a small, silvery rock, glowing with a gentle light. It looked just like a tiny piece of the moon. Luna gasped. Had the moon heard her letters? Had it sent her a piece of itself? She cautiously approached the rock and touched it with her nose. It felt warm and smooth, and it filled her with a sense of peace and wonder. Suddenly, she heard a tiny voice. "Thank you for your letters, little rabbit. They have brought joy to our lunar village." Luna looked around, but she didn't see anyone. "Who said that?" she squeaked. "We did," the voice replied. "We are the Moonlings, and we live on the moon." Luna looked up at the moon and, for the first time, she noticed tiny, shimmering lights dancing across its surface. They were the Moonlings, small, furry creatures with big, bright eyes and silvery wings. "We have been reading your letters, Luna," one of the Moonlings said, "and we are so grateful for your kind words and your beautiful drawings. But I thought the moon was a giant carrot," Luna said, feeling a little embarrassed. The Moonlings giggled. "It is a giant carrot, but it's also a village, a home for us Moonlings." They explained that the moon was a special place, filled with magic and wonder. They lived in cozy little houses carved into the lunar surface, and they spent their days singing songs, playing games, and tending to their glowing moon gardens. "We sent you this moon rock as a token of our gratitude," one of the Moonlings said. "It will always remind you of our friendship." Luna was overjoyed. She had made friends with the Moonlings. She spent the rest of the day talking to them, learning about their lunar village and sharing stories about her life in the forest. From that day on, Luna continued to write letters to the moon, but now she wrote to her friends, the Moonlings. She told them about her adventures in the forest, about the changing seasons, and about her dreams of visiting the moon. And the Moonlings would write back, sharing stories about their lunar village and inviting her to visit them someday. One night, as Luna was gazing at the moon, she felt a warm, gentle breeze lift her off the ground. She looked down and saw that her moon rock was glowing brightly, lifting her higher and higher into the sky. She was flying. She was flying to the moon. She soared through the stars, past the planets, and finally landed softly on the lunar surface. The Moonlings were there to greet her, their faces beaming with joy. They took her on a tour of their village, showing her their glowing houses, their shimmering gardens, and their magical moon pools. They sang songs, played games, and danced under the light of the earth. Luna had the time of her life. She learned so much about the moon and about the Moonlings, and she realized that the universe was full of wonders, waiting to be discovered. After a wonderful visit, it was time for Luna to return to Earth. The Moonlings gave her a special gift, a tiny moon flower that would bloom only under the light of the moon. She flew back to her burrow, carrying the moon flower carefully in her paws. She planted it in her carrot garden, and every night, it would bloom with a soft, silvery light, reminding her of her friends on the moon. And so, Luna, the little rabbit who wrote letters to the moon, lived happily ever after, knowing that even the smallest creature can make a big difference in the universe. Now, little one, close your eyes and imagine yourself flying to the moon. Imagine the shimmering lights of the moonling village, the soft glow of the moonflowers, and the warmth of friendship that surrounds you. Dream sweet dreams, and remember that anything is possible if you just believe. The universe is full of magic, waiting to be discovered. Good night, sleep tight, and don't forget to write your own letters to the moon. You never know who might be listening. The troll who grew a garden. Deep, deep within the whispering mountains, nestled between sharp, jagged peaks and shadowed valleys, lived a troll named Grumblesnout. Now, Grumblesnout wasn't like the trolls in storybooks who loved to gobble up goats and stomp on bridges. No, Grumblesnout mostly just grumbled. He grumbled when the sun was too bright. He grumbled when the rain was too wet. He grumbled when the wind howled, and he grumbled when the wind was still. He grumbled about the rocks being too pointy, the dirt being too dusty, and the berries being too, well, everything. His home was a dark, damp cave, filled with nothing but dust bunnies, cobwebs, and a collection of particularly grumpy-looking pebbles. Outside, the land was just as bleak. Gray rocks, scraggly bushes with thorns, and mud. Lots and lots of mud. It suited Grumblesnout just fine. Perfectly miserable, he'd mutter, wrapping himself tighter in his scratchy, brown cloak. One day, a little bird, a robin with a bright red breast, landed just outside Grumblesnout's cave, twittered a cheerful little song. Grumblesnout, who was halfway through complaining about the echo of his own grumbles, peeked out. "Shoo! Go away, you noisy little feather flutterer," he growled. The robin, unfazed, tilted its head. "Chirp, chirp, pretty song," it chirped again, hopping closer. Grumblesnout stamped his foot. "Pretty annoying, more like, there's nothing pretty here, just rocks and dirt and—" He stopped, his eyes narrowing. The robin was pecking at something in the mud. "What are you eating?" he demanded. The robin hopped back, revealing a tiny, brown seed. It chirped happily and swallowed the seed. "Seed," Grumblesnout grumbled. "What good is a seed? It's just a little brown speck. It won't do anything. Everything here is dreary and awful." The robin, still chirping, flew off. Grumblesnout watched it go, then looked back at the tiny patch of mud where the seed had been. He shook his head. Silly bird, silly seed, silly world. He turned back to his cave, but something felt different. Maybe it was the robin's cheerful song. Maybe it was the sight of the tiny seed. Or maybe it was just that for once, he had something else to grumble about besides himself. The next day, Grumblesnout found himself looking at the patch of mud again. He grumbled, of course. "Nothing will grow here. It's too rocky, too muddy, too troll-y." But he found himself also looking at the patch of mud with curiosity. He noticed that the mud was actually quite dark and rich in color. He poked it with his toe. It was surprisingly soft. "Oomph," he grumbled. "It's still awful." He went back into his cave, but he couldn't shake the image of the little brown seed from his mind. He spent the rest of the day grumbling about seeds and birds and the audacity of nature to exist outside his cave. The next morning, Grumblesnout did something truly extraordinary. He went outside and, instead of just grumbling at the patch of mud, he poked at it with a stick. He loosened the soil, removing a few small rocks. "Stupid rocks," he grumbled, throwing them aside. "Getting in the way of nothing." He continued to poke and prod until the patch of mud was a little less muddy and a little more, well, like dirt. He even found himself smoothing it out with his large, knobbly hand. He went back to his cave, feeling strangely tired, and a little bit different. He didn't quite understand it. Days turned into weeks. Grumblesnout kept going back to the patch of dirt. He pulled out more rocks. He even brought water from a nearby stream, grumbling about the weight of the bucket the entire time, and watered the patch of dirt. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, something began to happen. A tiny, green sprout emerged from the dirt. Grumblesnout stared at it. He grumbled, of course. "Stupid sprout. Probably weeds." Just more things to make me miserable. But inside, a tiny spark of something that wasn't grumbling flickered. He watered the sprout again. The sprout grew a little bigger, then a little bigger still. It grew its first tiny leaf, then another. Soon it was a small plant. Around the plant, other sprouts began to appear, little green shoots pushing their way up through the dirt. Grumblesnout couldn't help but feel proud. He would never admit it, of course. He still grumbled. He grumbled about the sun being too hot, the rain being too cold, and the bugs being too buggy. But he kept tending to the plants. He learned that some needed more water than others. He learned that some preferred the shade, while others thrived in the sun. He learned the difference between a weed and a flower, though he still grumbled about the weeds. One day, a tiny bud appeared on one of the plants. Grumblesnout stared at it with a mixture of suspicion and anticipation. He watered it carefully, making sure it had enough sunlight. The bud grew bigger and bigger until finally it opened. It was a flower, a small, delicate flower with petals of the most beautiful shade of purple Grumblesnout had ever seen. He stared at the flower, speechless. He had never seen anything so beautiful in his life. He forgot to grumble. He forgot about the rocks and the mud and the dust and the gloom. He just stared at the flower. More flowers bloomed. Red ones, yellow ones, pink ones, and white ones. Suddenly, Grumblesnout's patch of dirt wasn't a patch of dirt anymore. It was a garden. A beautiful, vibrant garden filled with color and life. The robin came back, bringing its friends. Bees buzzed around the flowers, collecting nectar. Butterflies fluttered through the air. Even a few friendly field mice came to visit. Grumblesnout, surrounded by the beauty of his garden, found himself smiling. A small, hesitant smile, but a smile nonetheless. He still grumbled, of course. He grumbled about the bees stinging, though they never did, the butterflies tickling his nose, and the mice stealing his berries, though he always left extra for them. But his grumbles were different now. They weren't filled with bitterness and anger. They were more like gentle murmurs. He was grumbling at the world, not at himself. One day, a young troll, small and timid, stumbled upon Grumblesnout's garden. She had heard rumors of a grumpy old troll living in the Whispering Mountains, and she was afraid. She peeked through the bushes and saw Grumblesnout tending to his flowers. He was humming a little tune, a very off-key tune, but a tune nonetheless. "Excuse me," she said shyly. Grumblesnout jumped. He turned around, his face scowling as always. "What do you want?" he grumbled. The young troll flinched. I just wanted to see the garden," she stammered. It's very beautiful." Grumblesnout looked at his garden, then back at the young troll. He hesitated for a moment, then said, "Well, don't just stand there. Come in." The young troll's eyes widened. She cautiously stepped into the garden. Grumblesnout showed her around, pointing out his favorite flowers, explaining how to water them, and even letting her pick a few berries. He grumbled a little, of course, but his grumbles were softer than she expected. The young troll spent the afternoon in the garden, helping Grumblesnout with his chores. She learned about the different plants, the different bugs, and even the different shades of dirt. As the sun began to set, the young troll prepared to leave. "Thank you," she said to Grumblesnout. "This was the most wonderful afternoon I've ever had." Grumblesnout grumbled something unintelligible, but the young troll knew he was pleased. She left the garden, feeling lighter and happier than she had ever felt before. Grumblesnout watched her go, then turned back to his flowers. He watered them carefully, humming his off-key tune. He realized something. His garden wasn't just a collection of plants and flowers. It was a place of beauty, a place of peace, and a place of connection. It had transformed not only the landscape around his cave, but also the landscape within his heart. He still grumbled, of course. He was, after all, Grumblesnout the troll. But now, his grumbles were mixed with something else. Something like happiness. And as he looked at his garden, bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun, he knew that even a grumpy old troll could grow something beautiful, if only he gave it a chance. He went into his cave, No longer dark and lonely, but just a cozy and safe place for him to rest. He lay down on his bed of moss and soft leaves, and for the first time in a long time, Grumblesnout fell asleep with a smile on his face and the sweet scent of flowers in his nose. He dreamed of seeds and sprouts, of buzzing bees and fluttering butterflies, and of a garden that bloomed forever. And that, my dear, is the story of the troll who grew a garden, and in doing so, grew a little happiness in his heart, too. Now close your eyes and imagine your own beautiful garden filled with all your favorite things. Sleep tight,